Howdy doodly doo, ladies and gentlemen. No, it's not the Glorious Movie Show. This is the Words About Games podcast, or Gamescast Extended Edition, where we're going to have a discussion of the little thing that we talked about on the last episode. Is Sean Layden right? Should AAA games be 12 to 15 hours long? We're going to have a good discussion about this here. Do we have different opinions? I am the glorious one, Mr. Moody, Hot Tuna himself, even though I'm not wearing a shirt. And we've got the glorious, amazing Amy Alexander.
That's the whole reason I wanted you to do the intro, just so you could pump up my ego a little bit.
We all need a little ego-inducing sometimes, so I can't deny that. So, Amy, you and me, I brought this up last week on the last episode of the Gamescast you and me did, and you suggested, let's do it as its own video. Because it sounded like you had more points. We didn't think we could get it in a 3-minute discussion. We needed to get it in for at least a good 20-minute video minimum and everything. So
I'm just going to put a SpongeBob title card up that just says 3 hours later.
Something like that, yeah. Lisa, if you do not know what we're talking about here, Sean Layden, the PlayStation executive Sean Layden has called for the industry to examine its trends towards bigger and more expansive video games. During a live conference call on Game Lab Live, and I'll get his quote up here, Sean Layden obviously discussed the ultimate examine of story-driven video games in the PlayStation 4 era. We can make you scream, yell, and be horrified. He did that in The Last of Us 2, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, just to reiterate that. Those are easy ones to get, he said. But if we make you compliment... Oh, God, I don't think I'm saying that right. C-O-N-T-E-P... Contemplative, sad. That's really hitting the full... gummit of emotional responses of gaming experience. Going on into talking a little bit more about The Last of Us Part 2, that fellow Layden recalls a day of $1 million production budget for the biggest game on the market, and referenced the company stated theories of the cost of development, blah, blah, blah. The problem with the model, quote from him here, should I say, is it just not sustainable. Examining that the current generation has seen the cost development reach between around $80 to $150 million for most AAA games. Excluding marketing costs, with production taking up to 5 years to start from start to finish. Continuing the quote, I don't think that in the next generation you can take those numbers and multiply them by 2 and think you can grow. I think the industry as a whole needs to sit back and go, all right, what are we building? What are the audience's expectations? What is the best way to get our story across and say what we need to say, end quote. Restart, end quote. It's hard for every adventure game to shoot for a 50 to 60 hours gameplay milestone, because that's going to be so much more expensive to achieve. And in the end, you may close some interesting creators and their stories out of the market, if that's the kind of threshold they have to meet. We have to reevaluate that. And that's pretty much the most of the gist of what he's saying here, that he believes the AAA industry needs to reevaluate itself when it comes to the expensiveness of video game of making the video games. Like our prices over here are like in the UK are like around £50 to £55. If you go digital, you're looking at about £60, and that's normally it's like $60 over in America. But they haven't risen the prices for them, but the cost has gone up for video games. So I can definitely see where he's coming from here.
I always take issue with the thing of like when you watch a podcast or something, and it's like American people, and they're like, "Well, the price of video games hasn't changed since whatever," and I just sit here and go, "Yeah, it has. It really has over here. It has."
Yeah. But they're cheaper now than they were in those days, if I remember rightly, if I'm saying that right.
Well, they used to be like, I don't know what they were. I'm not even going to pretend I know. But I remember, I know they've gone up in the last 10, 15 years
Yeah.
in the UK. Because I remember
So,
buying
Amy,
brand new games for £35 to £40, and now you can't do
yeah,
that anymore.
yeah, Galaxy far,
30,
far away those days.
30 quid if you were buying a new AAA game on Steam once upon a time.
Yeah, that's what it is. And what are your thoughts on this thing? We both love a variety of games out there. We both love our indie games, our small little gems out there. We love the little AA games. We do love AAA games. Like some of our favorite games, obviously like from the Microsofts, the Ubisofts, the Activisions, the EAs, and Sony itself. Like Sony, have like especially like a God of War, The Last of Us 1 and 2, the Uncharted series, and etc. etc. What are your thoughts overall on this? Are you in the middle? Are you somewhere? Do you agree with him? Do you not agree with him? Do you think that we need to reevaluate? What are your thoughts here?
Oh, I've got a lot of thoughts on a lot of different aspects of what Sean said. I mean, yeah, he's not wrong in terms of like. I'm going to say something that's been said contentiously before, which is video games are in general, right? I'm talking broadly. I'm not talking specifically every single video. It's hashtag not all video games, but video games are kind of too long, and I say that as someone who like one of my favorite genres is the JRPG, and those games like I've sunk 150 hours in Persona 5. I sunk 60, 70 hours into like freaking Final Fantasy 15. Like, God no, I spent 10 hours doing one optional dungeon on Eternal Sonata back in the day just because it was there. and I could. Like, so like yeah, I've put a lot of time in individual games before. But there are some games, Moody, where they're just so freaking long, it's ridiculous. At this moment in time. Like, they're padded, right? Like,
Yeah.
you get a lean experience, you get a lean, cool experience out of the game, but instead they put all this extra stuff in to keep people playing it. To say that they've got the biggest open world, and it's just like, I don't need that. I don't really need that. I never finished Assassin's Creed Origins or Odyssey because I ran out of steam on those games, and there are plenty of games like that.
Yeah.
But like those were the first ones that came to mind because I was really enjoying the story and the gameplay, but I wasn't enjoying having to go off and do all these side quests to level up to then unlock the next story campaign, and spending like an hour and a half trying to clear out a fortress where it's just like, I don't want to do this, but I have to do this because it's part of the game. Like I was when we were talking about Yakuza a few weeks ago, and I mentioned it was when I was recommending PS4 games to you, and I talked about Judgment, and like Judgment's a massive game with loads of different side things to do, but you don't have to do most of them. Like, could easily be a 60, 70, 80 hour experience. For me, it was like 30. Because all I did was, I just went, nah, I don't have the time or the patience or the wherewithal to put 80 hours into this game, but I'm really digging this story, so I'm just going to keep going. And even just going through the story missions in that game, it was like, yeah, there are certain bits of it where it's like, they've stretched it. Like, this mission doesn't necessarily happen, this story beat is a bit pointless, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a much better experience. Whereas if I'd gone, I'm going to do everything that's in this game, I never would have made it. I never would have made it to the end. Like, I'm going to do all the side quests and do the romance, and do this and do that. And I would have just been like, cool. This is going in the same pile as Assassin's Creed Odyssey or something else. It's like, I tried. It's the I tried pile.
I think it's like a multiple things, really, isn't it? Like, I'm like right there with you, like JRPGs. Like, I used to love them as a kid. Like, my favorite game of all time is a JRPG, Final Fantasy IX. I adore that game. It's my favorite game of all time. I replay it constantly. But I won't lie, when I replay it on my PlayStation 4 or on my Xbox One, I do use the cheats to speed up the fights to get myself leveled up a little bit quicker. I do not deny that at all. Or even just use a 99 hit combo right at the beginning just to slice right through it. I don't deny that, ladies and gentlemen. I admit that. But I think it's like it all depends on the world at the same time. Like you just said one yourself, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. You were very mixed on that. You enjoyed it, but there were parts where you were just like you've said multiple times, even to me and multiple friends of ours, that was a grind for you. You were like you felt knackered after it. But for me, I personally loved it. Like that's the thing about it. I think it all depends on the world, but to that, but I will agree to Sean Layden. There needs to be a revaluation. There's no doubt about it. Like The Last of Us Part 2, one of my favorite games this year. It's around 25 hours, maybe even 30 hours. Could it have been shortened? Definitely. There's no doubt about that. I think there's parts you could have maybe took out, just making that tighten it a little bit, especially when the first one's like around 15 hours, and everyone just says that pacing was perfect. So they've literally slapped 10 hours extra on the game.
Yeah, the first
and it's very
the first
intriguing.
one was very well paced and
yeah,
more of a classic sort of Naughty Dog style, linear action adventure game.
Mm-hmm.
Horror,
and like they stepped the toes into, like when it came to Uncharted 4 with having a little bit of an open world aspect to it, and they added that in The Last of Us Part 2. It's very unusual. Like Sean Lane, like he obviously his not talking contract is unlocked because he's talking now, so I'm very intrigued to see what else he talks about in the future and everything. But yeah, there is some fundamental parts of you where I'm getting into the age now where I am studying, looking to find a job and everything, and where a huge 40 to 60 hour experience is probably something that's going to put me off. Like I'm going to shout out this one, Red Dead Redemption 2. It is a technical mastery for what the developers and the team did to make that game. I give them nothing but props and take my hat cap off to them. But it is boring as hell. For me. Absolutely boring as hell. I was just like... That's how it was for me. But I can't disagree I can't argue against anyone who says they love it. Because, one, I wouldn't do that. Because they had a different experience than me. And they personally loved it. And I'll always champion that. And I'm disappointed that I didn't enjoy it. But I'm over the moon that you did enough type of thing.
Right.
But I'll always go to 12, 15 hour game probably is something that we need to start truly looking at.
They exist. It's hard to find them these days. That used to be what the AAA industry was before open worlds and and whatnot became a thing. Like the thing about, I mean, you mentioned Red Dead Redemption 2 specifically. That's an interesting one to bring up because so many things about that game is fantastic. Mm-hmm. For me, and I probably said this in my impressions video of the game, like when there's a lot of little aggravations in that game, and the thing about a super long running time is the more longer you play the game, the more the aggravations stack on top of one another. So like the little things like the combat's a bit flotty, and the searching the bodies, and the doing this, and the horses that run into trees on their own like power and stuff. Like there's a ton of stuff. I don't need to re-review the game here. But yeah, like there's lots of different ways games can be too long. Like yeah, I'm a busy person. Like I run the YouTube channel, I do the Twitch channel. I have a job, a day job, which I'd like to get back to at some point. But the where you masks people. But the thing about, like I've said this to Keith. The thing about it is like, yeah, I don't have time to play loads of like 40, 60, 80, 100 hour games, right? But when a game comes along that I want to put that amount of time into, I always find the time. You can always find the time to do something, like to do that. You know what I mean? Like, even if it takes like a long time, like you don't necessarily need to beat the game within a week or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I've always managed to I've got a list of games. Like I keep a list of all the games for like Game of the Year and stuff. I keep a list of all the games I've played, and I keep little check marks of the ones that I've finished. And some of them are really long, and it's like we talk about, like, remember the period of time when all the games in the world were coming out? in like March, April time, and it was like, oh my god, how am I going to find the time to do all of this and play all of this? I mean, I still managed to find 150 hours to put into Animal Crossing, and I still managed to finish Final Fantasy VII. Like, I didn't finish like other games that came along then because I just didn't want to. Like, Neo 2 is one of my favorite games of the year, top 5, top 10 probably by the time we get to the end of the year. But my god, there's like 70 bosses in that game, and I just no. That's too many. That's too long. That's too much. Like, it's great for people who like want to, and again, like people who want to put that amount of time in Neo 2, it's great for them. But like for me, a lot of games have a lot of padding, and it just feels like, yeah, there's too much in this game for me. And then that gets compounded when you look at open worlds, and it's like, collect 50 feathers and collect the 100 of these. Well, what do? Not much. You just get a trophy. Oh, what the hell? Why? Bing. Okay, why was that in the game? Could I not get a trophy for like doing something really cool?
Yeah, I understand that. There's no doubt about that. For like, I'm trying to think of the last 12 to 15 hour game that I played. Really,
like
off
some
the
of
top of my head,
Ori.
Games. Ori. I guess it's Ori.
Ori, yeah.
Ori's the last one. Probably is the last one.
Like, some of the shortest games I've played have been some like Sayonara Wild Hearts was in like top 15 last year. That game's an hour and a half. It's 90 minutes. It's the length of an album. Like, and you know what? It was one of my favorite games of the year. I paid for it, like, I can't remember, 15, 20 quid, something like that. I was like, fine, that's fine. Like, if you want me to spend like 15, 20 quid on like a game that's going to last me 100 hours, but it's not going to be that fun. And it's like, well, no. But like, I've run into this argument a lot of people saying value for money, like, and it's like the value of the dollar or the pound per hour, where it's like, well, I could spend X amount on a game that's going to last me a few hours, or I could spend X amount on a game that's going to last me 100 hours, and people keep telling me like, well, I get the most value out of the 100-hour game, and that's true if you enjoy those 100 hours. But if you don't, are you really getting the best value out of it? Like, if you think the game's good, but this bit sucked and that bit sucked, I did enjoy this and I didn't enjoy that, it's like, Persona 5. Yeah. Persona 5 is a 100-hour game. That could easily be trimmed down. It really could. Like, it could be streamlined. But yeah, I put the 100 hours into it and I enjoyed it. So
yeah, it all depends. Like I said at the beginning, it's multiple things here. Like, it all depends on what type of game you're looking for.
Yeah.
What you want and everything like that. Like you just said, you put 100 hours into Persona 5. I ain't gonna touch that game, even though you recommended it. I ain't touching that game. I have not
breaking my heart.
I have not got the time or patience to play that type of game personally, and that's just the thing about it. Like, I'll literally just hop on to my Xbox and do one race of F1 for myself. Play that, do a full race of it. I'm done within an hour, and that's perfect. I love that type of thing. I'm just like, boom, boom, done and dusted, wham, bam, thank you, mom, type of thing. And that was the same thing, like, when it comes to The Last of Us, like, the first Last of Us, that story part was really, really great. It's the perfect length and everything like that. Last of Us 2, yeah, I can look at it and let's just say that you could have trimmed just that maybe an hour or two off it, maybe knocking it close to more to 20 hours and having it at 25 hours and everything. But it all depends on what the experience is for you, really. Yeah. That's still the thing I think it comes to.
It just 100% depends on the game. Like, Doom Eternal was longer than Doom 2016, and I think that hurt Doom Eternal. Like, in my personal, like, it seems so simple, right? Everybody loved Doom. Everybody, quote unquote, everybody loved Doom. So, like, let's just make Doom Eternal, but give them more of it. But that should be a simple equation, right? There's more of it. People are going to love it even more. And then it turns out, well, no, actually, because Doom, one of the things that was great about Doom 2016 was its length. Like, it left you wanting more. And I remember playing Doom Eternal and getting to the last few levels of the game, maybe like 3 hours or so of the game, and just being like, it's still going. Like, oh, like I'm starting to get burnt out on it.
Yeah. It's like one of those things, like, I'll use Resident Evil 2 last year. That ultimately, if you play that normally, I didn't mean normally here, Lizzo, you're looking at about, say, a 6 hour to an 8 hour experience overall. You and me loved it and blasted that, and we played that. We could do both scenarios probably within 3 hours.
Quicker than that.
Give or take.
But, I mean, that's also another interesting factor of video games too long, where it's like, Capcom released this game that took me 6.5 hours to beat. Like, the first time I played it, Resident Evil 2 Remake, 6.5 hours, went and did the other campaign, probably like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
After that, so like, let's call it a 10-hour game. Let's just use a round number on it. But the amount of time I put into that game was considerably more than 10 hours because I replayed it a bunch. Whereas, like, we go back to the example of Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where it's like, I probably put about 10 or 15 hours into Assassin's Creed Odyssey and just flamed out hard. Because, yeah, for the reasons I stated before. And, like, it's a tough one. And obviously everyone's different and everyone's going to have different opinions on it. But, like, yeah, could you imagine if, like, Assassin's Creed Odyssey just let you play through the story? Like, and you didn't have to necessarily go, well, I have to do this and then this, and now I can do this, and then I have to do this and this and this to do the next part. And it's just like, I would have been calling it, I probably would have been with Fixer. He's our friend, my Xbox and me, youtube.com/mcfixer, who called it his game of the year. But I didn't, because I didn't like a lot of the side activities that I was routed through.
Do you think if they had the same type of model of what you've already said, like Yakuza, where you could just stick to the story, and if you want to go off and do those other things, you can do that. But the thing with Odyssey, you had to go off to level up, or do what you have openly admitted. You said yourself, you did. You bought the
I bought the XP booster, which helped
to help you get
somewhat. It helped great deal, actually. Well, the reason I did that, and I should probably mention, is because Ubisoft gave me a copy of Assassin's Creed Odyssey to review. So I felt like spending £10 on an XP booster, wasn't egregious, because I'd been given the game for free. And I mean, like, it would be cool. Like, there was this game that came out on PlayStation Vita years ago, and it was called Orishike, Tainted Bloodlines. It's a JRPG. It was a really good game. I never actually finished it. Ironically, never actually finished it. But, it came out at a really busy time. But it had this really cool thing where you started the game, and you I can't remember if you selected a difficulty option or not, but you selected the general length of the experience that you wanted to have from the game. I think there were like 4 or 5 different options. And what it did was it tweaked like the gameplay elements to suit the type of game you want to play. So you could select it and play like a 10-15 hour experience. And there was like multiple options all the way up to you want the full 80 to 100 hour experience. And it would be cool if more bigger games did that, right? Could you imagine if Assassin's Creed Odyssey or Red Dead Redemption 2 came with those kinds of options, where it's like, cool, what kind of experience do you want from this game? Like, maybe if you play because you might not necessarily know until you play the game a bit. So like, play like the prologue. Yeah. And then it gets to the point, and it's like, cool, do you want the full 80 to 100 hour experience from this game? Or do you want the 60 hour experience? Or do you want the 40 hour experience? Or do you just want the streamlined 20 hour? You know what I mean? There are probably ways you could have those options in the games.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's like less is more, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
I feel like the developers seem like they feel like they're obligated. Okay, our last game was 10 hours. We got to at least make this minimum 15 hours, if not 20 hours. And it's just like, no, you don't. You don't. Like there are like you said yourself, the Doom Eternal, you feel was a little too long compared to the last one. You felt the last one was just the right amount, and they put a couple of more few hours on it, made it just that little bit too much for you.
I don't know if it was the right amount. It just left me wanting more. Like, it left me at the point where I was like,
yeah.
that was awesome. I'm like, I wasn't burnt. But then I got to Doom Eternal, and I was like, okay, I'm still playing this. Like, we had it with
That's
Keith, where we were talking to him on streams and stuff, and he was saying, like, I'm still going. Like, is this going to be over soon? I want to play Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a very interesting conversation. Like Sean Layden, I think he's really thrown out a very interesting thing just for sustainability for them. Like, obviously, like that's why we're seeing games that are games of service, like the Destinies, the Divisions, Battle Royale games, and everything. But Battle Royale games they're kind of like in the right spot. You could have, like, for us, Apex, where if we get to the very end, it's about 20 minutes long, 30 minutes max.
Yeah, for like a match, like
Yeah, for one match, if you get to the end, if you get to, like, say, the final four, well, top five, it's like a 20-minute game. So that's kind of pretty much perfect. And that's what I can see why people always go back to the Battle Royale game all the time. You're getting those nice little spurts of games every time. But when you go... But it was also all throughout... Like I said, my favorite game is Final Fantasy 9. Your favorite game is Final Fantasy 7. Both came out in the 90s. There was not as many games then compared to what there are now.
True. Do you remember a time when you used to wait?
I remember
between games.
Yeah. I remember the year we had Spider-Man came out for PlayStation 4. A week after that, we had Assassin's Creed Odyssey. That is insane to think that. Now, yes, there's no doubt about that's the company's position where they want to place the game and everything, but for the consumer, you're just like, what the bloody hell? That one, those are two big, huge open world games. And yes, I did play them back to back and everything. And thankfully, because I enjoyed the experience and the world I was in for both of them, I had an enjoyable experience. But like, if I went from Spider-Man, which I loved, and went to Assassin's Creed, I would say I'm just not clicking with it because it's either the world or I'm just not ready for another open world experience. It's like trying to find. I think it's a lot of things of trying to find the balance for the player of. For what type of game they want to make, but also the industry probably needs to look at the sustainability. There's no doubt about. But when you're the biggest industry in the world, the companies are going to be like, do we really need to do this because we're making so much money and all like that? So like Last of Us Part 2 sold 4 million copies in 3 days. They've made over 100 million plus on this game minimum already, if not close to 200 billion, whatever else they've made and what, so like they've really, I think ultimately it's going to land on part of there's more games than there was when we were growing up, but there's also what kind of experience do you want?
Yeah, there's also the pressure because I don't think my idea of the game adapting to what kind of experience you want, like in Orishika, I don't think that would necessarily make the game shorter to develop. I think it would probably make it longer. But like, there's also the pressure to do it because that's what people have been conditioned to expect. The next game is going to be bigger and it is going to be more. It's going to have more, and then you go, more of what? And then the developer just goes, everything, because that's what people have been conditioned to expect from AAA games. It's like you look at Cyberpunk.
5 bosses, you're going to have 10 bosses next time.
You look at Cyberpunk 2077 versus The Witcher 3, where it's like The Witcher 3 was, the size of that world was epic, and the amount of stuff there was in that world that was meaningful to actually get to was absurd. Like, it was incredible, but it was also absurd. Like, the amount of stuff that was worth seeing. And then in Cyberpunk, like, they're talking it up like it's more. Like, there's going to be more of this and more of that and more of this. And it's just like, it could have just been the same amount.
It's daunting, yeah.
And I think we would have been okay. But I think we would have been okay. But I think there's a lot of people out there, the gamers, trademark, capitalized G, that probably would have kicked off if it had been like, well, Cyberpunk's actually the same size as The Witcher. People would have been like, what? It's not. There's not more of everything, and it's part of it's the conditioning to it. For sure. Like,
it's like the developers feel like they need to give us more when technically they don't really need to.
Yeah, like video games are too long. Like, look at the length of The Last of Us Part 2. Which, let's say it's 30 hours. It was around about 30 hours for both of us. That's entire TV shows. Like,
yeah,
you could sit down and watch an entire TV show in the time you play The Last of Us Part 2.
That's basically the first 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. Add in maybe the first 3 episodes of the third season.
I haven't done the math, but it's probably most of, if not all of She-Ra. Like, the thing we both just watched.
Oh, yeah, it'll be more than She-Ra.
Yeah, and it's just like, okay,
Guaranteed,
wow. It's a lot. Like, it's a lot. And it's a big time investment. For sure.
Yeah.
And The Last of Us Part 2 is on the shorter end of of AAA games. Like, that's why I really liked Spider-Man, because you could get through it in a shorter period of time. Like, even when I platinumed it, it wasn't that much. It was still like 40, 50 hours. But when you're talking about I platinumed it, I did everything in the game in that amount of time. Like, I didn't platinum The Last of Us Part 2. That's probably going to be another 30 hours. Like, if I decide to go back and get that trophy, which I've been thinking about, but I needed a power answer. No, it's not a hard game. It's a platinum.
Yeah,
which I also appreciate.
Compared to the first one, I think you have to replay it in hard mode
stuff and difficulty, tiny difficulty. It's a shame that like we've lost the nuance out of the discussion, of course. But which is a part of the problem. But it's like some video games will be long, and that's cool. Because some video games need to be long. Most video games that are long don't need to be long. And it's because they're filled with padding and filler and all this other stuff, and it's sometimes that's optional, and that's great because that means you don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. But when it's not necessarily optional, that's when it's this game is too long. It just is.
I'm half expecting Spider-Man Miles Morales will be shorter than the first game.
It'll be 10 hours. It'll be Lost Legacy size. And that's good. That's good. You're going to get a good, solid 10-hour experience.
With a good story, with a character you care about, with good mechanics. That's basically what you all want, ladies and gentlemen.
And then maybe there's some extra side content and some gang hideouts and some other stuff to do that adds to the experience. And that's where I want a game to be. I want to be able to just plow through a story of a game. That's what I want. Because, if I don't want to do any of the extra stuff, but I'm really into the story, I should, it's like watching a DVD, right? And you watch the DVD, you watch the TV show like a box set, and you watch the TV show, but it's like having to watch all of the commentaries and having to watch all of the extras. To get through it and stuff. And it's if that was the case, if that was all mandatory stuff to do on top of watching the show, it's would you watch the show still? Or will you start complaining that maybe it's a bit much?
Yeah. It's a fascinating, it's a great conversation, and I'm very intrigued to see what everyone else thinks of this. I think ultimately we probably go, it's probably, they are a little too long these days, but they're also, like I said, there's many little things to it. Like I said, there are more video games, there are more there's more this and that. Games. Yeah, right? There's endless. Yeah.
I'm playing Destiny 2 at the moment. I'll let you know when I've finished it.
And Destiny 3 comes out.
which is not going to happen. So. But no, it's the only line in the sand I draw in a discussion about the length of video games is we need to stop as a collective community and industry. We need to stop looking at games as a game's value as being it's 10 hours long, which means it's £6 an hour, whereas this other game is 20 hours long, so there it's worth £3 an hour. So that one's the better value one. It's sometimes quality over quantity is a thing.
Yeah. I've heard multiple people say, gone home, that's an hour and a half game, but I've heard multiple people say they would happily pay a full price of $60 for that.
I did. I paid $100, 20, 30 quid, and I was super happy with playing that. It took me 3-4 hours of exploration. When you know what you're doing in that game, you can complete it in a minute.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah,
if you know where you're going, you can complete that game in a minute because it's right there. At the beginning, it's one of the fun things about the game. But there's all sorts of games like that I've played where it's they're super short, but I love them, and I would happily pay whatever I paid for them. Sometimes I'm blessed enough to get review copies of games, and so the price would be zero. But at the same, like, you know what I mean? Like, I paid for Fire Emblem Three Houses. I paid for Control. Those were my top 2 games of last year. One of them was 60 hours, 69 hours, and the other one was like 10, 15 hours. Out of them both equally. I don't think Fire Emblem gave me more value because it was longer.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's maybe the ultimate thing the industry needs to figure out. Like, only because it's a 10-hour game doesn't mean it's not going to be worth a $60 price.
Yeah.
Or if it's a 30-hour, if you're throwing in a 30 to 40-hour game, does not mean it deserves to be a $60 game.
Yeah.
And I think that's the ultimate thing that the industry needs to sort out and everything. But also, again, prices and everything was like I'll throw in like I went to a Game Jam Award ceremony earlier this year, 9 years ago, ladies and gentlemen, in 2020, where I spoke to a developer who spoke to us and like to everyone who was there, where he was literally going through every single division that basically game development has, and that a lot of them are incredibly expensive, and that's why sadly prices are going up. Like, and mostly it's on visuals. The visuals are the things that skyrocket the prices and everything. So
yeah, and it's like, do we need like? I mean, we're at the point now where we have to, like, because the AAA games industry is like, it is, again, it's a thing that they've made a problem for themselves.
Yeah.
Did we need a game to look as good as The Last of Us Part 2? It's great that it does, and the animation and everything is fantastic, and hats off to the teams that created that. But did we need that? Because now when we get to the next generation, which is in a few months, like, the expectation and the pressure is it's got to look better than that, and then a year after that it's got to look better than that, and then a year after that it's got to look better than that. And it's like, did we need that? Did we need to spend that much money on it?
Sorry.
No,
the thing is, we've kind of hit a wall with that.
Yeah.
The visuals is pretty much as high. There was always a generational leap, because PCs were already ahead of consoles when it comes to visuals for what people could do and everything. But consoles are now, especially when it comes to the next generation, are hitting a level where they are practically at the same level of PCs. Yes, PCs will run better and yada 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 if you keep them updated and all like that. But we've now hit the wall where we've got the people, the gamers and everything have to now readjust to saying, okay, where is this innovation going to come from now? Because the visuals are practically the same. Someone's died.
I think
but it's all good.
I think someone's building a table.
But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting take. But
yeah. I mean, like we're in it now, so it's a bit disingenuous to say, well, do we need these graphics? Because unfortunately, the way the video game industry is set up, graphics for some people are the most important things in a game. Like, this has to look better. If this doesn't look better than the last one, what's the point? It's like, well, why didn't we innovate on gameplay instead, or storytelling? Like, we've only just started to innovate on storytelling, like, in the past few years. Whereas, like, it's always been like, get more polygons on the screen, like, you know, get more pixels, get the animation, improve the mocap, make it look prettier. Like, look at Lara Croft's hair, like, with this new shader thing that you can get on this one graphics card on PC. Like, look at it, it looks so realistic. Spoiler alert, it didn't look realistic. It kept clipping through her head.
The hair looks better on on Last of Us.
Yeah. Well, that was like, I remember it was a thing when I bought the Tomb Raider game, and they were like hair effects or something, trash effects, and it would be like clipping through a head and whatnot. It was ridiculous. The other thing is marketing. We spend too much. Like, the games industry spends too much money on marketing. Like, it just does. Like, it doesn't need to. But the problem is, because one player spends X amount, the other player has to spend X amount, otherwise it will just disappear compared to the other game, and it's a vicious cycle. But, like, you talk about, like, a game will cost $80 to $120 million, like Sean Layden said, but then, like, the marketing budget will be double that. It'll be the same amount. So it'll double the price of the game. It's like, imagine if you didn't spend that much money on marketing.
Yeah, like, games 9 times out, especially when it comes to AAA games, need to make probably double what their combined production budget and marketing. So if it was like 150 all combined, they would need to make at least over 300 million to at least break even on it. Which, when it comes to like sustainability for like the big AAA games like Call of Duty and the FIFAs and the sports games, 9 times out of 10 always break even because of maybe shady practices for a lot of people, but 9 times out of 10 because of the simplisticness when it comes to the games.
We talked about it on a podcast not that long ago, where it's like at a certain point when you're a AAA game, like you won't fail, you can't fail because too many people are already going to buy your game because of the money that you pump into the market. Like Star Wars Battlefront 2 was one of the best-selling games of 2017, despite the fact that the conversation around that game was completely and wholly negative, because it was marketed. It was in the theaters. It was on everywhere you went. Banners, posters, YouTube ads, Twitch ads, TV ads, movie ads, and it was like it sold like 10 million copies. It's like, yeah, they already knew they were going to sell millions upon millions of copies because they couldn't not because of the marketing spread. And it's the same for all games, like Cyberpunk 2077. Like, go back to The Last of Us Part 2, when everybody was talking about how the game had leaked, and it was that, and people were going to cancel the pre-orders because it had leaked, and people were mad it wasn't going to sell as well. It was like it always was. Like, you could have leaked that someone could have done a let's play of that entire game and leaked it on YouTube, and it still would have sold really well because it couldn't not.
That's the thing about it. I think the trust of developers is so high for people, or just games in general. Like Naughty Dog, for a lot of people, there's a huge trust for them for that. FIFAs, because they're just simple games to play, and it's one of the biggest sports in the world. So kids like that type of game. Call of Duties, I'll stand by it. I'm not the biggest fan of Call of Duties, but the gameplay is fantastic. I'll never deny that, and they have a core audience that works for them, and that's why they're always pretty much in the top 3 of best-selling game of the year, even though they're only out for the last 2 to 3 months of the year. 9 times out of 10, they sell so many copies within 3 months. Like Animal Crossing has sold so many copies, it'll probably not be number 1 by the end of the year because of Call of Duty, or FIFA, or Madden.
And it's marketing. You can't go anywhere without knowing that Call of Duty and FIFA and Madden exist. And Cyberpunk.
Like when those,
and everything else.
When those games start pumping out, it's going to be all over the place.
But then you other games, you forget they exist. Remember Rage 2? Everybody was surprised when it came out because they didn't market it. But they did market it. That's the point. People say they didn't market it. They didn't. They did. And it was around. But because it wasn't saturated, because they didn't spend the entire game's production budget on marketing the game, it disappeared, and a lot of people didn't know much about it. That's how it was.
That's true.
And you could save a lot of money if everybody just throttled back on it.
Yeah.
See, there are ways to save the money without saying we have to raise the price of games, or we have to have these microtransactions. But
it's an interesting conversation. And I won't lie, I think we could really go on this for hours on hours, but I think we'd keep on going back on a loop all the time. So I'll shout out. I think we have, yeah. So I'll shout out again once more to you, ladies and gentlemen. Let us know what your thoughts. Are video games too long? Are they? Just let us know. Yes or no? Simple. Are they just right now for you? Or do you want even longer? Do you want to feel like that you've thrown in £60 or $60 to make you feel like you are going to throw in at least a minimum of 60 hours plus into a video game? There's no wrong answer here. I'm not going to lie. It's like we've already landed on. It is personal preference to what type of game you like and everything. So don't worry about it. You won't get castrated in the chat.
No, I mean, to be fair, there is the argument that there are people out there who might only buy a couple of games a year. And then you want to get your bang for your buck, and you want to get the 60 or 100 hour games for the £60 that you're spending on the 2 or 3 games that you're buying a year, which is fair. It's fair.
Yeah. So I will write us right out here, ladies and gentlemen. I am the glorious one, hot tuna himself, Mr. Moody. This is the fabulous, glorious Amy Alexander. Hit us up on our Twitters. It'll be in the links down below and everything like that. If you want to have a good chat about this, as always, please be nice to both of us, or we'll just mute you, because I've been doing that a lot for a lot of people. It's had to work out this for you these last couple of weeks, but I love it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. As always, we love you. Stay safe.